is basically a local version of our Summer Streets program, and neighborhoods can shut down a series of blocks in their neighborhood on the weekends, and it's not your typical sausage and tube socks street fair, but it's a very local program that you get all kind of very creative, very local programming for the community. It's very successful. Just in the last year, we've doubled the number of events. Also, Street Seats is in our unit. Businesses as well as a community partner can apply to turn a parking space or two into a public seating platform. You don't need to be a patron of the business to sit there, and it's really been fantastic to see businesses who always associated business with a parking space now recognize that there's a truck parking in front of my business. It's actually maybe more attractive to have people and space and a much better environment for pedestrians. And then lastly, we also install city benches, which again is a request-driven program. Anyone in the city can apply online and request a city bench. We prioritize areas in front of senior centers, sidewalks where they're too narrow for a bus shelter, to encourage people to get out and walk and use public transportation. But the real bulk of our public space program is the Plaza program. This is Willoughby Square in downtown Brooklyn. Plazas are in the DOT right-of-way. They are largely open, flexible spaces. They are very much a transportation asset. They really service the transfer of social, economic, and cultural exchanges at the pedestrian scale. And nowhere is that maybe more evident in Times Square, where 90% of the traffic had only about 10% of the space. And so the project that was first done in interim materials and is now under reconstruction basically gave more space to that traffic, which was in fact pedestrian. And so these plazas are designed very differently than parks. They are very much right of way for utilities, for building entrances, for public transportation. And I'd just like to show this slide. This is a very cold day in Flatiron Plaza, and you can see that there are more people sitting in the plaza than there are in the park. And not that Madison Square Park isn't great, but this just shows that plazas are a very different type of space. And so parks are destinations, people go there to recreate. Plazas are really part of the streetscape. They're something that we designed to be open and flexible, and people are kind of always walking through, and the plazas really change to serve the local community. There are two main ways that plazas happen. One is more of a city-initiated version, which, for example, Dumbo Plaza, where there was a large infrastructure replacement and street reconstruction. And so as we had this opportunity to dig up all the streets, it also gave us an opportunity to reconstruct and enlarge the plaza that is adjacent to the Manhattan Bridge. Another example of a city-initiated project is Fordham Plaza, which you all have seen. The city recognized that this was a major transportation hub, 80,000 people walking along Fordham Road a day, a ton of people using the Metro North Station. It was a very underutilized asset. And so out of an EDC study to look at what we could do to improve the space, we were awarded a Tiger grant and also generated other funding to be able to design and reconstruct this plaza. But the majority of our plazas come to us through our application-based program, where we have a set of criteria and we competitively rank sites to deliver public space in the communities where they need them most. But the overall similarity to all of our plazas is that they all have a community partner. And so whether the partner applies, or like in Fordham Plaza, where we worked to find the Fordham Road bid to partner with us there, the community partner acts as really the local guardian, and they do everything from maintain the space, but also program the space and keep the space very relevant in that community. Our priorities for siting the plazas, again, areas that lack open space, also in areas that are low income. We prioritize areas that have a lot of community support. So we really put a lot of responsibility on our partner to do a lot of the local outreach. And when they come to us, we want them to demonstrate that they've been talking to the larger set of neighborhood stakeholders to make sure that this is something that the larger community wants. We also prioritize safety. So especially in Vision Zero, our plaza projects oftentimes close dangerous intersections, normalize intersections, and help enhance safety both for pedestrians, but for all vehicle users, so cyclists and motorists. We also prioritize areas with excessive roadway. So like I said before, a lot of our streets are over-designed. This is in Fort Greene, Fowler Square in Brooklyn. At the peak hour, there were only 95 vehicles using this street, but over 4 times as many pedestrians. There were only 2 parking spaces. This is the site before. There was a park statue, but virtually no amenities in this traffic island, and so we were able to close that space, actually enhance the traffic along Fulton Street, which is the major transportation corridor in Fort Greene, and create a really, really fantastic public space. But we don't always have to close the street. So this is an example in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where we were just able to enlarge the sidewalk. We actually kept the roadway at the same capacity and created a really great public space. We also prioritize areas that are active pedestrian corridors. We're not looking to design spaces and hope people will come. We're looking to look at spaces where there are already a lot of people, and we want to give them more and a higher quality of open space. And so also areas that have active retail and transit. So that being said, we have quite a robust public outreach process for our plazas. We hold a series of public workshops. We work very closely with our community partners on outreach, the different languages that we should hold the workshop in, depending on the community. And we do a lot of drawing and going back and talking with people and doing iterative design to make sure that these public spaces really meet the issues and opportunities that the community sees in the neighborhood. And then we don't move forward with any of our plazas unless we get a community board vote. And this is Diversity Plaza in Jackson Heights, and this was one of the first, in recent history, first community board meetings held outside in a public space. We have 3 different types of plazas. One is a one-day event. It's a really great way for us to both test the space for the community to see how it will work, also for us to test the partner. The partner has to take care of it and program it for a day, so we really get to see how well and up to the challenge that the partner is to maintain a space. Then we go into our interim materials plazas. This is a very quick installation period. We don't need to do any reconstruction. Everything goes down in about a week. And what it does is allow us to deliver a public space to the community quickly. You know, they've worked really hard to get these spaces through the community board. It would be a shame to then hold off for 3 or 4 years before we could capitally reconstruct a plaza. So this enables us to deliver a public amenity immediately, but it also allows us to watch and really learn from the space and see what's working and see what's not working, so that by the time we spend a lot more money to capitally reconstruct the space, we know that we're going to be delivering a public space that will really benefit the community. This is a fully reconstructed space, Albee Square in downtown Brooklyn. Our partners have a lot of responsibilities. They sign a legal maintenance or concession agreement with DOT. They're responsible for everything from bagging up trash, wiping down tables and chairs, making sure that the plantings are watered, alive, locking up the furniture at night, making sure there are clear paths through the snow. And then those partners are also responsible for the active programming of these spaces. It's not just enough to keep a lot of these spaces clean, but they really need positive use and community involvement. So it's everything from temporary markets, smaller scale community events like Chess and Checkers Club. This is the Uni Project, which is a mobile reading room that travels to a bunch of our spaces. Also cultural programming. We have a really fantastic partner out in Corona, Queens. QEDC has partnered with the Queens Museum, and they have a really fantastic, very local set of cultural events that really respond to the community there. Also, plazas are great for art, both temporary and permanent. So that's a lot to require of a partner, especially some of these low capacity partners that are in some lower income neighborhoods. So we have developed a concession model which allows our partners to generate revenue from the site. All of that revenue must then go back into the maintenance and the programming of that public space. And we have 3 different ways that the partners can generate revenue. One is through a sub-concession. So this is Albee Square. You'll see quite a few of these. We have some in Times Square, in Chelsea Plaza. And this is, the partner has to go out for a public RFP. They can ask for whatever service they want. We see a lot of coffee and pastry type plaza amenities. The second revenue type is limited sponsorship. So that's everything from Yahoo sponsoring free Wi-Fi in Times Square to plantings provided by Theory in that case in Gansevoort. There can't be advertising in the plaza, so we have sponsorship rules about the size of the font and the logo and things like that that keep it legally within the realm of sponsorship. And then the last type of revenue is commercial events, so it's through SAPO. Any event held in a public plaza needs to get a permit from the Street Activity Permit Office. But we set up a model where, let's say, for example, Starbucks comes to Flatiron. Not only do they need to pay SAPO a commercial event fee, but they also pay our partner a commercial event fee. And that event fee is based off of the partner's annual maintenance costs. So it's a direct proportion to that. We don't just build these spaces and walk away. We constantly track their outcomes and see how they're performing. So safety has been a huge success of a lot of these spaces. It's just a few stats from Times Square where you see injuries down, less people walking in the roadway. We also look at, very Holly White, Jan Gell type usage of the space to see how they're performing. A good male-female breakdown, which we see in a lot of our spaces, indicates that overall the space feels safe and comfortable. We also find that our spaces are very social. So we see a lot of groups there, spaces where communities really can get to know each other. And we've also seen a lot of really great economic benefits. This is a fantastic example. Again, Willoughby Plaza in downtown Brooklyn, one of our first capitally reconstructed plazas. And in addition to the combined sales increasing and new businesses moving in, the adjacent business, so this adjacent business, they just had this big blank wall beforehand. When they knew we were coming in to build a permanent plaza, they built an entirely new facade, punched a whole series of doors and windows, and if you've been there recently, it's just full of life and active retail, and it's really transformed downtown Brooklyn. So it's fantastic that a public program can leverage this much private investment in the public realm. So this is a quick snapshot of where we are now. We currently have 71 plazas that are somewhere in planning, design, construction, or complete. About 50 of those are open to the public. And this is our heat map of basically the areas that we are looking at. This is a very quick breakdown by the borough, so you can see we still have quite a bit of work to do. Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island for sure. And I just want to end very quickly with 2 stories. This is Putnam Plaza in Clinton Hill in Brooklyn. When we first opened this plaza back in 2011, the local partner, which is the Fab Alliance bid, they asked the police department if they could hold movie nights on hot summer nights in the plaza, and the precinct said, absolutely not. This neighborhood is way too dangerous. Any kind of gathering at night would be terrible. Absolutely not. Within just a couple years, this is a photo from last year, but within a couple of years, the bid has really used this public space to showcase the positive civic activity in the neighborhood. And last summer, but also this summer, they are hosting a series of extremely successful evening public movies without incident. And just last year, the bid engaged with more than 65 local programming partners, more than 60 events, over 6,000 attendees. And so it's just a great example of how a small space in a community can really be used to bring out all of the good and active civic life that's happening in a neighborhood. And lastly, it's been really interesting for us to watch the program grow since 2008 and see that in the wake of, so for example, this is in the wake of Hurricane Sandy, 78th Street in Jackson Heights with Councilmember Danny Drum. these plazas were in the public conscious as a place to gather, and so we saw quite a few relief efforts take place in the plaza. And most recently, this is Diversity Plaza in Jackson Heights. And in the wake of the earthquake in Nepal, the plaza served as a memorial and also as a relief. A lot of funds were gathered and generated here. And to us, this really demonstrates the really vital role of plazas, both in a city, the fundamental exchange of information, but also in communities, that this is a place where the community can use and gather and really become stronger. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Weidenhoff. Questions? Ms. Efron.
First, congratulations. It is so exciting, and I'm glad you mentioned Holly White, because I think he's somewhere just very happy about what you all are doing. It's quite amazing. How many of the plazas are run by bids? And I guess the question I'm asking is it a neighborhood that has an active bid that is more likely to get itself together to have a DOT plaza?
So probably a little over half of our plaza partners are bids, and bids do it makes a lot of sense because they already have people that are out on the street doing a lot of the plaza maintenance, and they're used to trying to think about programming to draw people to their district. Also, they have a regular income, so that also helps. That being said, we have a very wide range of bids that we work with, so everything from Grand Central Partnership to the Pitkin Avenue bid, which I think has one of the smallest assessments in the city. But we work with a lot of other partner types, and we have recently been awarded some money from 1YC to help with the maintenance and technical support and programming to help these lower capacity partners. Because something we did notice after quite a few years of the program is that while we had this heat map of priorities, one of the things our plaza map showed us was just where there were very strong community partners in the city, not necessarily the neighborhoods that most needed space. So a big part of our 1YC efforts are to really deliver these spaces in the lower capacity neighborhoods.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mr. Cantor.
Thank you. While Holly Light may be happy, I wonder how Henry Ford feels. I noticed, first of all, I think these plazas are
Didn't mean Holly Light.
but I noticed universally there was virtually no traffic in any of those areas. You've done some studies, I understand, but I'm curious as to where have the cars gone, where have the buses gone, where have the delivery vehicles gone, and has there been a study of the impact, positive or negative, with regard to vehicles?
So with every single one of our plazas, we do a traffic analysis, and that's either done by our in-house folks, or sometimes, it's part of a much larger traffic study. But in the design of these spaces, that's something, in addition to where the traffic goes, we look at, where are trucks going to load and unload, because again, a lot of these are located in commercial corridors. We look at where sanitation will pick up. And so these are very nuanced design issues that we work out with the local partner. In terms of some of the larger traffic studies, I can send you links and give you information about, green light for Midtown, for example, with Times Square and other larger projects. But in every single project, we want to make sure that while we're gaining pedestrian benefit, that we're not dramatically decreasing the level of service for vehicles.
Do we have statistics on that?
Yeah, we can share some with you.
Mr. Knuckles.
Thank you. Well, as an extension to that question regarding vehicles, do you have any feedback from businesses about the impact that the reduction of vehicular traffic and the ability to park adjacent to the business, what has that done to the business revenue issue?
So in the plazas that we've studied, we almost always see an uptick in commercial sales, in rents. Our most recent, more formal publication was the Economic Benefits of Sustainable Streets. That has quite a few plazas in it, and again, it shows an uptick in sales, and I can make sure that I send you that link.
I'd like to see that, yes.
But again, for most of our programs, we have anecdotal evidence, but something to show that that businesses are benefiting. Something else that we track, and this is where our local partners really come in handy. So going back to Putnam Plaza, which was the movie night outside, one of the things that the local bid has been tracking is that since the plaza has been installed, there's been a lot of investment from local businesses, either in sidewalk cafes, liquor licenses, facade enhancements. So the businesses, and the majority of those are local. They're not chains. And so the businesses are seeing benefits to having a lot more people walking and lingering in their neighborhoods. We've also seen businesses that were against plazas initially. When we're able to get it out there in the interim phase, we've seen a lot of businesses really change their mind and say, actually, I am for this. So that's also been very interesting to see. But it's something we'd like to do, certainly in the very near future, is really take a more specific look at the economic benefits of plaza specifically.
Okay, I'd like to see that link, thank you.
Ms. Delausse.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you could just speak a little bit more, especially since you said that one of the priorities in terms of citing the plazas is, specific to low and moderate income communities and looking at your heat map. Can you just talk a little bit more about the kinds of things that you're doing to increase capacity so that you can cite more plazas in those areas?
So we're just starting this effort because we just found out that we got this funding. But the goal is to provide maintenance services as well as technical support. So really teaching the community partner how to take care of a public space and what it takes to maintain the space. We work very closely with the Department of Small Business Services, and we share a lot of very common partners, and so we're kind of constantly talking with them to see, what we can do to help our partners, but also delivering programming so that, again, not all of that falls on the partner, but that we can be providing some of that as well.
As a follow-up question, so the local partner still has to have come to DOT first to express interest, and then if you see that there's a capacity issue, then you kind of come in with the additional capacity. How about if you just target an area that needs it? Do you go out and seek a partner in that case?
So developing plazas is very iterative, and we get tips from everywhere, from city planning staff who are out there and kind of always see these spaces and the potential that might be there. So we do, also council members are a really great source of plaza sites, and also linking us up with partners and community groups who want to be doing something. So we kind of get them to the point where they're ready to apply to the program and kind of take on that local leadership role. But we certainly do, a lot of hand-holding and talking them through. But that's what's great about our other public space programs, is that they very much act as like a primer. So we'll see groups who start out as a weekend walks partner. They learn their precinct, they get to know their local sanitation crew. They learn, who are the people in their neighborhood, and then we'll really see them grow and sometimes come back and apply for a plaza to take on a more ambitious role. So a lot of our programs, Street Seats, Weekend Walks, we provide the funding for that, reimbursements, things that, so really it's it's their organization time and a lot of outreach on their behalf. So that really also helps prime and get them ready to be a stronger partner.
Thanks.
Ms. Levin.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for making this presentation. It's really helpful. We've had a couple of these kinds of situations come before us, and we're kind of, poking at the sides of the elephant, particularly a long time ago, when we had the changes that were proposed for Times Square, and that seemed like a scrambled, difficult situation. So this helps at least us understand a little bit more who the players are and how that works. And I just think it's great over the last 2 administrations that we begin to talk about streets as being for something more than cars. So these are great. I'm curious about the design criteria that you apply as you're figuring out what uses or what amenities and hardscape improvements are appropriate in plazas. Here at City Planning, of course, we're familiar with the design standards that we oversee for privately owned open spaces, and we've just approved Vanderbilt, the little stretch of Vanderbilt Avenue, which someone at DOT is going to be in charge of the design process on, and we were all told, oh, don't worry, they can do it as well as we can. So we all voted yes. But could you tell us a little bit about how you go about designing public space, what the criteria are?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, when the program was being developed, we very much leaned on the POPs design guidelines. For us, kind of the most fundamental thing is to look at the pedestrian circulation paths, where people want to go, where they're trying to go, where they are going already, and really try to honor those, because again, we see these spaces as this critical transportation asset, and if someone wants to find the shortest route to the subway, we want to be able to deliver that and feel that that's important for the space to do that. Honestly, one of the other biggest design parameters is something that you can't really see, but it's the underground utilities. So because the majority of our infrastructure is underneath our streets, that actually very much limits what we can place where. Certainly a diversity of seating is huge, making sure that movable, fixed seating, furniture that has backs and armrests, to just accommodate, all different age ranges and all different types of uses. We see that successful. We, over the course of the program, we've also made a big push to try to use our street design manual as much as possible and go with materials that are DOT standards that we can actually maintain in-house. So we've worked with some designers who can do some really beautiful things with just standard concrete and scoring patterns and tinting. And what's great is that then is something that we can maintain in-house that doesn't have to be a burden for our partner. They just have to sweep it. That's it. So we've also really tried to stick to those standards. Street lighting is the same thing. Our city bench is great because we can incorporate that, and DOT also maintains that. But clear sight lines, having a space well lit, again, feeling that you're kind of not stuck anywhere, no places for people to hide, yet still feeling somewhat buffered and sheltered from either high vehicle volume streets or where there might be a lot of noise or activity, like an elevated subway. So really, balancing out those different parameters. But another huge thing is we work really closely with our partners. Our partners are literally at the table with us throughout the entire design process. So we're designing to their maintenance capacity, and we're designing to what they truly feel will be responsive to the neighborhood and will work in their neighborhood. Also, if in Putnam Plaza, we just recently took the preliminary design to PDC, and in that is a space to make sure they can set up the movie screen once the space is reconstructed, because that was just such a successful event. But yeah, our kind of primary criteria are circulation and overall flexibility, so that these spaces can stay relevant as the neighborhoods are changing. They can not be full of stuff.
Right. So how many of these, do these all go to the Design Commission as well, or just the ones that have build-out?
So either the Design Commission for the ones that are capitally funded, or we also go to landmarks if they're in a historic district.
Okay. And do you also go to the local community board?
Yes, local community board.
Are they involved in the design?
Yes. We invite the community board to all of our public workshops, and we go to them both at the interim phase, but then also at the capital reconstruction phase.
Thank you.
Ms. Efron.
Since you mentioned the POPs guidelines, is there any formal review once these are in place? Do you review the design criteria every 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? how do you know when the use of a neighborhood's public plaza has changed so that it needs a redo?
Well, so the program has only been around now since 2008, and only a handful of these are capitally reconstructed, but we are embarking on a very rigorous plaza analysis. So user surveys, actually having folks out there to monitor the usage of the space, and we're looking to keep a very regular catalog of how the spaces are performing, not only how much it's costing to maintain, as well as the revenue that's generated, but how those kind of Holly White public space criteria are performing, so we can notice, is something going wrong? Do we need to intervene here? Do we need to, try to find a different partner, for example? So that we kind of see this as what will be like a property management portfolio almost of public space analysis that we can be kind of regularly checking in on.
And is that built in? Is there an annual review or the contract's let on a particular term?
So up until this point, we've had, it's been a combination of DOT staff and gracious grad student volunteers that have just gone out into the field and taken surveys and done observational analysis. And we're basically looking to make a more robust effort. And ideally, we'd like to be able to either publish an annual report or do something biannually. We're in the process of figuring out what makes the most sense, but we'd like to have something regular, not just for us, but that we can put out publicly.
Ms. Ortiz.
Thank you. Hi. A number of commissioners have touched on issues that I had as well. Thank you also for this presentation that happens to be in my neighborhood. So I'm very familiar with that space and how it's struggled significantly. And I think that gets to the question of capacity. I'm curious, you mentioned about half of these spaces are within bids. Do you notice a significant difference? It speaks to monitoring. You'd have to monitor to be able to determine that. But even anecdotally, between spaces that are managed by a professional entity with staff and a budget and others, is that something that you're trying to address through this new initiative?
Yeah, I would say a little, we see certainly the typology of the group playing into how well the space is managed, but also the site can really play a big role in that. So this, for example, is just a tremendous transportation hub. There are a whole lot of people. There is not a lot of public space in this neighborhood. So the sheer volume of people here is an issue. Even if this group, which literally just formed to be able to maintain the plaza here, and we've been working with them for a while, and they're growing, and there have been these offshoot groups, which has been very encouraging, and I think we're getting to a place where we'll have a stronger group once the plaza is redesigned. But again, I think that's the our big goal with this 1YC money is to really be able to use that to develop stronger partners.
And along those lines, with respect to monitoring, we have a process for creating these, but, in case are there cases where they have been removed, and is there a process for that if it's deemed appropriate, or if maintenance is not occurring, and it creates a problem? How do we address that and go the other way?
Absolutely. So we actually have not had to remove any of the plazas that we've put down yet. We've had to reconfigure some of them. So there have some that we've, removed a portion of it, shrunk it down a little bit. That one of the goals of using the standard DOT standard materials is so that even if a partner does fall through, it's all then materials that DOT can maintain. And I think that's something that we always think about. When the program started out, we designed some of these spaces with a bit more fancy materials, and I think we're always thinking about, what happens if the partner won't be able to maintain in the long term? How do we make sure that this is still a very well-maintained public space.
And one question along those lines, and I think this is really important, to what extent do you, in evaluating the partner, evaluate their sort of financial wherewithal to do this? And I think that backs into, the communities that probably manage these best are the ones that have the resources to do it, and we're probably overlooking communities where they need this, but there's no one to keep on top of it.
So as part of the Plaza program application, we look at the group's financials, both a year past, the current fiscal year, and one fiscal year out. And when they enter into an agreement with us, there's regular reporting. It's been interesting. I mean, we've seen, again, so for example, Corona Plaza out in Queens, that is a neighborhood that is low capacity. But one of the things that the local group there has done is partnered with other groups to really leverage the different areas of expertise. So again, there's QEDC, which can, they fundraise and they take care of the maintenance portion, but they don't know very much about programming. So they really have a fantastic relationship with Queens Museum, and Queens Museum steps in and they fundraise a little bit and have someone on staff who actually helps program the plaza. Both of those groups are very much in touch with their local councilwoman, and they, go out and fundraise, and they create a much larger community that really leverages a lot of resources. So it's not always the case that only the higher capacity plazas or higher capacity neighborhoods have the best maintained plazas. I mean, I think Corona Plaza is one of our best programmed plazas throughout the entire city.
Thank you.
I just want to follow up on some of the questions that Ms. Levin asked. As you know, we did just map Vanderbilt Plaza and mapped it as a public place, which really suggests that there are, you mentioned, 3 different kinds of spaces: streets, plazas, parks, and now a public place. Could you speak for a moment to the use differentials between them, and particularly the enforcement differentials? Obviously, in a park, the city has a significant ability to regulate the uses, and I assume in the street it has somewhat less ability to regulate uses as long as they're not interfering with traffic. But how would you differentiate a public place from a plaza, and how do you, in these open spaces, monitor and enforce against uses that, or people that are interfering or competitive even with a sub-franchisee, a sub-concessionaire, rather?
As you know, a lot of these regulatory issues are kind of very kind of at the front of our minds right now, especially with Times Square. We've seen, what became an incredibly successful public space now kind of transition into in some cases, overly too successful public space. There are a lot of issues with the predatory vendors, also just a tremendous amount of congestion. Our understanding of public place is that it's the agency who administers that land, their rules apply. So if Union Square, for example, is a public place, Parks administers Union Square, and so their rules, all Parks rules apply. It would be the same for DOT. But we have within our toolkit a set of both rulemaking but also signage that allows us to regulate activities. And so one example is our plaza sign. If you go to any of our plazas, there'll be a plaza name, and it will say, by order of the commissioner, no sleeping, no camping, certain activities like that. And we're interested in doing something very similar at Times Square, so we're in conversations with the bid there to see if that basic signage is able to help solve some of those issues, but certainly through rulemaking as well.
Is Times Square now a street, a plaza, a public place? It's not a park, I guess.
Well, a little piece of Duffy Square is
Right.
actually mapped parkland. So technically, Times Square is right-of-way, and we have rules in in the city administrative code that apply to roadway, that apply to sidewalk, and in a lot of ways, plaza is, another type, slightly more akin to sidewalk, but certainly has some of its own unique regulatory function. So in the no smoking ban, for example, that is one place where plazas are specifically called out, no smoking in parks, beaches, and plazas. And so one of the ways we're thinking about these spaces is as, again, we see them as a transportation asset, and it makes a lot of sense for DOT to continue to manage and maintain them as rights-of-way, but how can we sign and regulate these spaces to better serve this new use?
And then on, I think one of the reasons that we were so enthusiastic about you coming here is because of Fordham Plaza and what you're doing at Fordham Plaza. And at least my recollection now is that will be a place where you will be allowing the bid, or the bid anticipates doing some sort of sub-concessionaire agreement. How does that work? Do you give the bid guidelines on what they can, who they can sub-concessionaire to? Do you have to approve the sub-concession? Does that have to go to the FCRC?
So the entire process for the bid and their sub-concession is a public process. They have to do everything from post in the city record, post a public RFP. This is Fordham Plaza here, and so when we are working with them on that concession agreement, we designate the concession area, and the funds that the revenue that they receive can only go into the space that we designate on the map. So that's a big part of the Fordham ULURP, is expanding the concession area so that any revenue that the bid generates can then go to maintain what is now the entire plaza area. I'm here with my colleague, Kevin Forma. He works specifically in our concessions unit. Do you want to just very quickly run through the concession process?
Why don't you come up to the
Come on
mic?
up.
Excuse me, I have a little sinus issue right now, so I'm a little puzzled. But, so I'm Director of Franchises and Concessions for the department. So just to answer your question, what we do is once the partner signs a concession agreement with us, me and my staff will help them develop RFPs for the plazas. We've developed a lot of standard material for them, so we've developed a standard RFP that we've reviewed with Corporation Counsel in the city, and everybody's comfortable, so it's kind of just a plug-and-play sort of thing. I then oversee the process, make sure that this is going out to enough people. If need be, I help them distribute this I work with the Parks Department also, so we have concession lists that we send out to, I think the last mailing I sent out was 4,000 emails, plus about 1,500 other people. I mean, these are primarily individuals that have signed on to be part of the distribution list. And then once I walk through the process with them, we'll do interviews with concessionaires, which thankfully result in tasting sometimes, so that's very good. And then we help them develop the sub-concession agreement with them and make sure it's consistent with our agreement with the concession.
Mr. Knuckles?
What's the length of the concessions?
The concession, so the length of the sub-concession.
Right.
Well, I guess, first of all, the partner is our concession. Generally, what we have been putting out is.
Excuse me, does that have to go through FCRC if the
Yes.
concession?
Yes.
So the primary concessionaire has to be, and the terms of that has to go through?
Correct. The agreement and the terms and everything go through the FCRC process. The initial terms that we generally work with are 5-year initial terms with 4 one-year renewals afterwards. But it's never going over 9 years.
Thank you.
And then the sub-concessions are just, the terms equate with whatever the partner's concession. So they're in their initial term, the initial sub-concession agreement will end at their initial time.
And that sub-concession does not have to go through FCRC?
The sub-concession does not have to go through us.
Okay. Mr. Cirillo?
So just as a follow-up in that, and I'm going to go back to something earlier in the presentation regarding the fees that would grow out of the different revenue types. Are they limited in any way? Because I don't remember exactly, maybe I didn't hear this correctly or I misunderstood, but in terms of covering the maintenance costs versus just being a revenue producer, is there a difference in that, what I just said? Is there a limitation on what a sub-concessionaire can be charged for the sub-concession? Or I realize that the money needs to go back, obviously, into the geography of the plaza, but is there a limitation on what can be charged? And that may apply whether it's to a sub-concessionaire or to a limited sponsor or perhaps to a commercial event.
Sure, so there's 3 parts. So with the commercial event, those fees are set in the licensing agreement with the partner. We ask them to do an initial evaluation of their maintenance costs, and we then generally use the SAPO terms for large event, small event, extra small event, and we create basically a price list of how much those events get charged.
Got it.
That we review periodically just to make sure that it's keeping up with the partner's maintenance costs for the plaza. For the sub-concessions and the sponsorships, there's essentially no limit. I mean, if the sponsor wants to come in and donate whatever amount of money they want to donate, they're more than welcome to. We review the sponsorship materials, so Emily had a slide of little plaques or signs, so we generally try to follow, especially for signage, we try to follow our banner rules. So it's a similar setup where there's a limited amount of space available for the sponsor.
Sure.
The sub-concessionaire, in the RFP, we don't actually put prices to what we expect. So that is just limited as to however, if somebody comes and says, we want to give you $90,000 a year for this, to use this space, that gets evaluated in the criteria. And generally, there's a few different criteria in the RFP, money being one of them, but then there's usually like 4 different criteria, type of food, ingenuity, looking at how it fits into the general context of the neighborhood. All those get weighted in the RFP, and when that goes out, there's percentages attached to it.
Sure.
So they get weighted. So the short answer is no, there's no limit to.
I got it. I appreciate that. I guess just the quick follow-up to that is really priority order. So for example, if a partner has a sub-concession agreement that is, perfectly approved and functioning, and I guess I'm trying to look at the sort of the relationship between the partner and the city once the arrangement is created. I'm assuming that the plazas are not closed off to commercial events that are not necessarily programmed by the partner themselves, but the city perhaps may retain some
Correct. Anybody can
ability
apply
to-
for a SAPO permit to do an event. at the
even
plaza.
in the middle of a plaza that's maintained by
Correct.
some not-for-profit organization.
And that's
somewhere.
that's really where those event fees come into play.
Okay,
So it
so,
wouldn't be the partner doing like, they don't charge themselves to do the event.
Right.
But it would be an outside entity coming in to use the space that they would.
Interesting issue, because if you have a pre-existing sub-concession with a vendor who's going to be doing business there, and then whether it's the city or some third party comes in and goes to SAPO and says, we'd like to take this space, that has an impact on the pre-existing arrangement. And what happens that day? Your sub-concessionaire is out of business that day? Is that what happens?
It would depend on the event, and if.
Or your
capacity allows.
programming?
The capacity allows they could be open during the event. So it really just matters as to the size of the event. If it's something, I guess I'm thinking of like the NFL event that took place. The sub-concessionaire was essentially, most of these structures are not permanent, so they can be moved.
Right.
So if the space requires that, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much the physicality I'm thinking about. It's more about the legal relationship. If you have, just for example, whether it's a physical, there's a vendor that sells something, it's a food vendor in the middle of the plaza, or the beautiful movie night that is already programmed, there's a contract out, they're committed to having to pay this vendor, and then someone comes in and says, we want to give you $1 million for the plaza for the night, what happens to that relationship? So I guess I was just really a priority order of things. It's a very interesting, and I'm sure not an easy thing to work out all the time, but
Spend a lot of time on the phone.
I'll be, I can't look into the future, but I'm just trying to figure it out. But anyway, thank you.
It's a good problem
Thank
to
you,
have.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Weidenhoff. That was really very, very helpful for us. Thank you very much.
Good promise to have.
Good promise to have. It's all about energizing the neighborhood.
First item on our regular review session agenda for certification is the New York Wheel. It's a new special permit application to modify previously approved special permits. Farah from the Staten Island office will be making a presentation.
And this is Farah's first presentation to the commission, so welcome, Farah.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Jim. As Jim mentioned, this is an application for a new special permit for New York Wheel. The applicants are New York Wheel and New York City EDC. The application is pursuant to ZR Section 12861. This project was previously approved in November 2013 by the Commission under the special permit for North Waterfront Subdistrict within the St. George Special District. The special permit allowed development of this site pursuant to a development plan which superseded the underlying zoning regulations and required approval of a site plan, parking plan, open space plan, signage plan, and lighting plan. Since then, some design changes have been required due to geotechnical conditions, cost, and as well as other agency reviews, which led to modification of the previous development plan. These changes were beyond the substantial compliance built into the previous approval. So since this was a special permit approved pursuant to a development plan, it doesn't rely on underlying zoning regulations, and therefore a new special permit is required to update the plans, which is why we're here today. The proposal for this is construction of a 625 feet tall observation wheel and an accessory terminal building with retail and restaurant, a 4-level, 950 space openly ventilated public parking garage, a deck over the railroad right-of-way to connect Richmond Terrace to the development site, and related open space, including a playground. Before proceeding further, I'll just give you a little background. The proposed development is located at 155 Richmond Terrace, right here in the North Waterfront Subdistrict of the Special St. George District in Community Board 1 of Staten Island. The site is accessible by ferry terminal from Manhattan. Primary vehicular routes include Richmond Terrace from Bayonne Bridge in New Jersey, Victory Boulevard from south of the island, and Bay Street from Verrazano Bridge in Brooklyn. The development site located here is about 350 square foot, which is about 8 acres. It is currently under EDC jurisdiction and serves as a parking space, serves as parking lot for the commuter parking. 820 spaces are provided at this location. It abuts the railroad right-of-way and the retaining wall. The railroad right-of-way and the Richmond Terrace and Bay Street are actually built atop the retaining wall, which separates the Special St. George District from the adjacent hillside communities. If you can recall, the Special St. George District was rezoning adopted in 2008 by City Council. The goal was to build on existing civic center, neighborhood, and transit hub by providing pedestrian-friendly business and residential district, attract mixed uses, and maintain waterfront vistas. The surrounding area includes the St. George Ferry Terminal, as well as the Richmond County Bank Ballpark, which is adjacent to the development site right here. The ballpark was approved by the commission in 1999 and it opened in 2001. Additionally, currently under construction is Empire Outlets, which is the retail site, also part of the North Waterfront Subdistrict of the Special St. George District. It's actually currently under construction. It's 340,000 square footage of retail outlet mall with a hotel with 200 rooms, as well as about 1,200 spaces of public parking. Additionally, there's the Lighthouse Point, which is also a proposed development for about 109 dwelling units, some retail, some professional office space, a cinema, a hotel, as well as parking spaces for 340 parking. There are some landmarked buildings in the surrounding area, east and southeast of the development site. They include the Staten Island Family Courthouse, the 120th Police Precinct Station, Richmond County Courthouse, and Staten Island Borough Hall. The development site is located within an M1-1 zoning district. It's also part of a waterfront zoning district. The surrounding land use includes low and medium density commercial and residential districts. Also, Special Hillside Preservation District is south of this project area. There is about a 25 feet grade change between Richmond Terrace and the development site right here. There's also a railroad right-of-way contiguous to, but below the Richmond Terrace, beginning at the ferry terminal and continues past the development site. So here are some views, street views from the Richmond Terrace. As you can see, that's the development site. It's a parking lot, but it's located about 25 feet below the level of Richmond Terrace. Here's a view of the railroad right-of-way and the retaining wall. Area of the development site is also within FEMA flood zone, which requires the lowest elevation to be at or above base flood elevation of 12 and 11 feet. In 2013, the commission took several actions directly related to this development site, as well as the Empire Outlet site and neighboring related sites. So a map amendment was approved, which related to the expansion of the Special St. George District to include the project area as well as the retail site. A text amendment was also approved to establish the North Waterfront Subdistrict within this expanded Special St. George District, which created a new special permit available solely to Parcel 1, which is the development site for New York Whale, and Parcel 2, which is the Empire Outlet site. This special permit established specific guidelines for the appropriate uses and developments of these sites, which otherwise would not be permitted under an M1 zoning or a waterfront zoning. As such, very little flexibility was built into the tech zoning, the special permit zoning requirements. There were specific findings related to the zoning text amendment. Some of them, the more important ones to identify would be that appropriate use of unique location, that it improves public access to waterfront, provides adequate access for emergency vehicles, provides compatible signage and lighting, and public parking garage, among other things. All this is part of the North Shore 2030 St. George vision. The development, along with the retail site, would support the goals of the St. George under the long-term planning study of North Shore to address economic growth, to activate these public sites, to contribute to St. George's 24/7 lifestyle, to attract jobs, residents, and visitors, and also to provide attractive and welcoming waterfront promenade, encouraging visitors and residents to enjoy the North Shore destinations. Part of the actions were also disposition of city-owned property. So this is the parcel 1, which is for the New York Whale development site. So under the special permit approval, New York Whale was approved into 2013. Again, it was a 625 feet tall observation whale with a terminal building, a 3-story mechanically vented public parking garage to provide parking for 950 cars and 12 buses, about a 950 feet long deck over the railroad right-of-way to link the development site to Richmond Terrace. Open space plan included playground, green roof, sunset walk. Additionally, other aspects were included. As you can see here, there's a reflecting pool, solar panels, and a mechanical tower to support the mechanically ventilated parking garage, as well as the terminal building. So just to go over some of the key issues that kind of brought on the modifications to the site plan. They included soil conditions that they found out after the project was approved. Soil conditions were not adequate enough to support certain structure for the parking garage. As you can see, it's highlighted onto over here in purple. Additionally, there were decking issues related to, other agency reviews who found out that certain decking could not be provided, which is why parts of the decking was removed. Not to mention, there were some cost-related issues, which are highlighted here. So the new proposal is also for, obviously, the observation wheel. The terminal building has gotten a bit smaller because of structural concerns due to the soil conditions. The public parking garage now is 4-story. It's about the same height. However, the number of levels has been changed in order to adequately provide the 900 parking spaces. The decking was again shortened due to railroad right of concern from other agencies. Open space plan still includes a playground. The green roof now is an activated event space, which would, which they hope to have used for concerts and public events. Additionally, the interim parking phase, which originally had 4 phases, have been switched to 2 phases. So this is the plan right here. A comparison shows that the original development was approved as an observation wheel with a mechanically vented parking garage under a landscape berm. As you can see, the berming connects Richmond Terrace to the waterfront of this site. However, the current site is the observation well, but the parking garage structure now is openly ventilated on all sides. And the landscaping is on the open space and plazas on both Bank Street level and Richmond Terrace level. Here's a comparison, an overview comparison of, the size has decreased a bit. The railroad right-of-way decking has also decreased, as well as a bit of the open space and playground. So the design changes related to the key issues discussed before are, I'm going to go over them quickly. Here is where the soil conditions affected the structural integrity of the original proposal. As such, the building had to be relocated and the footprint had to be shifted and changed to adequately provide the 900 parking spaces as well as the terminal building amenities. The building now is a 4-level, the parking garage itself is now 4 levels instead of 3. However, as you can see, the height stays the same. Previously, it was underneath the berming, green landscape berming. Now it's openly ventilated and with landscaping on top as well as at the Bank Street level, the waterfront level. Here is kind of like a marked up Richmond level side plan that shows that those where it used to be bermed before and covered, now it's naturally vented, it's open to air. A Bank Street section view will show you how the building structure has changed. This is from the waterfront side at cross section. As you can see, previously it was the building, the parking garage was underneath this green berm. Now the building footprint has shifted to the side. Landscaping is a landscape buffer is still being provided between this Bank Street and the building itself, but it is now a buffer more than over the building itself. The building here, if you see around here, is open for ventilation purposes. This shows kind of what I'm talking about, what I was talking about previously. The berm has now been removed. The berm was needed to be removed in order to allow the parking to be naturally ventilated. The natural ventilation obviously saves on cost of ventilation from previously mechanically ventilated. Here from the Bank Street elevation, you can see that the berming that previously covered parts of the parking garage now is replaced with just the opening to the building itself. Here's a street view rendering that shows from the Bank Street level. This is a rendering on the Richmond Terrace elevation. Again, if you see behind the trees, it's the green berming that kind of was over the mechanically vented garage. Now the garage is exposed. I just want to mention that there is, again, a planted buffer, landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the building itself. So there is still landscaping provided. Here's a view, a Richmond view rendering of the building itself. So additionally, the deck previously was offered to be contiguous from the ballpark side to the end of the development site. However, due to MTA and DOT and Con Ed concerns, as well as emergency ventilation purposes, parts of the decking needs to be left open. Otherwise, they would have to provide mechanical ventilation. Additionally, DOT and Con Ed had issues with placement of the structural support that was needed for decking around these areas. For example, on the east side of the property, you see that used to be decking with the mechanical tower on top, which has now been removed, and you see the bus turnaround underneath the building. Part of the decking was also removed on the western portion of the railroad right-of-way. Previously, it covered the Nicholas Street ramp into the parking garage. Currently, it is open to air. Again, it's about 70 to 90 feet opening, which was required in order to keep the decking as not as a tunnel, which would require emergency ventilation through mechanical equipment and add to the cost of providing decking. Cost was an issue. Cost was also a key issue for design changes. As you can see, the reflection pool was removed, which would need additional filtration and require additional mechanical equipment and energy, as well as maintenance costs. Solar panels, which were originally part of the approval, have been replaced. I want to mention that these were taken away, however, replaced with more open space and landscaping. There is now, for example, by the solar panel, there's this more open seating area that's supposed to serve a restaurant or food area. The playground has also changed a bit. Originally, it was over part of the deck that has been removed on the west side of the property of the development site. So it had to be reconfigured. The size of the square footage of the playground is smaller. However, now it includes a lot more equipment and a lot more user-friendly than what was previously approved. Here's a view from the Richmond Terrace side of the playground itself. Additionally, the zoning lot boundary had to be changed a bit. If you can see here, it's not as noticeable. This is in order to allow one of the leg structure of the observation wheel to have more space, because in order to provide the right support that it needs. The zoning lot boundary extension does not require a land disposition action because it is already part of the original tax lot that was used for the land disposition action. Additionally, the interim parking phase was originally a 4-part phased parking plan that's supposed to provide all 820 parking spaces for the commuters during construction. They are now cutting it down to 2 parking phases. They will still be providing the 820 commuter spaces during construction. Part of the special permit approval was that the site plan, the development plan provides adequate pedestrian and vehicular access. As you can see here, there's a comparison between the 2013 pedestrian access versus the 2015. Entrances and exits remain the same, as well as most of the pedestrian access walkways. Same at grade, which you can see inside access, and pedestrian movement at grade remains similar. Vehicular access also remains similar in the sense that bus drop-off and shuttle drop-off also remain in the same areas. Additionally, as I mentioned before, the original development plan included signage, a specific signage plan, specific lighting plan, widening of Bank Street, and providing esplanade improvement on the waterfront side of the development. All these will remain the same. There are no changes to the original plans, approved plans. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Farah. Let me just add that obviously, this is a very important project for Staten Island and for the city of New York, and we want to see it proceed, and there were many both site conditions and cost considerations that required changes here, and these changes really, although as Farah indicated, there was a very tight envelope in which to work. Even in a normal envelope, those changes would require a major modification, and thus it is back before us. And we continue to work with the applicant to assure that this plan is as best it can be. And we will continue to do that as we go through the process and as it comes back here for a public hearing and review by the commission. So with that, questions. Mr. Cantor.
Is the major driver here the soil conditions or the MTA requirements? I assume that the buildings have moved dimensionally significantly, right? Which the contours are all changed.
Yes,
I don't know what impact it has on the community. What were the drivers, the real drivers?
the real drivers were the soil conditions as well as cost. To mention right here, for example, this is where the soil conditions affected the footprint of the building and location. In order to kind of go over these soil condition issues, they would have to increase their cost by 35%, around 35%, which was a big driver for changing.
Didn't they have some idea of the costs and the problems?
Yeah, I wasn't here at the time, but as many of you who were here at the time know, that this was a project that was approved under intense time pressures at the end of the last administration.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that the applicant really had the full opportunity to fully test out soil conditions and other cost considerations. And as it did after the project did go through the public review process, it became apparent that the costs were really, really substantially higher than anticipated. And I think that was just a product of the circumstances and the time pressures in which the project was approved. That said, while cost is a very, very important issue, we do want to make sure that this is as a project that all of us can be, and particularly people on Staten Island who will have to look at this project from, those of us who don't live on Staten Island will be looking at it iconically across the bay from Brooklyn and Lower Manhattan. Those that live on Staten Island will look at it from Staten Island and Richmond Terrace. And we want to, all of us, make sure that this is, for all concerned, a project that is harmonious with its surroundings and works as well as we can possibly hope.
I would just add that this is actually a good image to show what you're looking at here. Is in black is the 2013 building footprint of the garage, and what's in red is what is currently being proposed. And as you can tell, again, the soil conditions, there's a lot going on when this actually came through in a very short time frame. So as Carl, the chairman, noted, it was very challenging to actually try and design something in that time frame, and soil conditions were not made evident until after we approved the project. In addition, while conversations were going on with MTA about the railroad right-of-way, it wasn't until after the approvals that it became evident between Con Edison and utilities and MTA as to the structural
Issues related
structural
to the
issues and actually
decking.
trying to put in support for a railroad, with the decking over the railroad right-of-way, which became apparent that would not work at this particular the location, and therefore, they had to make these changes to both the western end and the eastern end.
I think the chair's observation that the job might have been processed more hastily than it should have been is probably the driver. And the fact that the soil conditions are there is helpful in saving money.
Well, we all, this is an important project, we all want it to succeed, and we all want it to be, from a design perspective, as outstanding. And I really have to commend the staff here for working with the applicant, given the constraints we have, to assure that, in fact, it is, and they continue to do so. This is, this will, I'm confident, continue to evolve and improve as it goes through the process and comes before us in 3 months' time. Ms. Deluz.
I'm just wondering, first off, thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate the side-by-side comparison of 2013 to 2015. That's certainly very helpful. And two main questions. One is, well, 1 point and then a question. I think it's an improvement, actually, at least on the parking phasing piece, that it's gone from 4 to 2. I mean, I remember spending quite a bit of time talking about that piece of the plan at that moment in time, and you know, for the public to have to adjust 4 different times over a construction time period versus twice, I think actually is important. The question I have really has to do with the naturally ventilated parking garage and what precautions are being taken so that headlights are not showing either out from into the water area, because I think that kind of changes the whole feel of the experience. And the same is true, now that parking garage, I'm not really sure where it sits relative to the residential pieces across the street, and whether or not there's any potential for headlights to shine into that area.
Right. So here you can see Richmond Terrace is on this side.
Right.
Richmond Terrace versus Bank Street Waterfront is on the other side. Richmond Terrace is obviously at 25 feet higher. So you see the parking garage from kind of the Richmond Terrace level and upward. Even though the parking garage is openly ventilated, there are fins that are being provided to, fins that are in angles that are provided in order to kind of, adequately provide that the headlights from inside or from outside the view is not of the cars themselves.
Okay.
This has been through the Public Design Commission also.
Great, good
Which
to know.
actually has looked at the exterior design of the garage, noting that these, like this,
Yeah.
paralleling the angled fins.
Mr. Cantor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little confused. The original garage was below grade and it was fully ventilated.
Mechanically.
No, the original garage.
The original garage was not fully below grade. It was still above grade, as you can see on this.
Okay, I know, except for that level, the rest of the job was ventilated.
Exactly, and it still is currently. Original approval, there was a landscape berm that went over the mechanically vented garage, which covered a lot of that, in the front, the sides of the building itself.
Okay.
And
But to follow
What you're
Mr.
looking at, right?
Deleuze, now that more of the garage is above grade, presumably, even with the fins, it's going to have more than 50% open, so therefore it will not require ventilation. And to get back to her question, what will be seen across the river, if we may, in the way of lighting from that garage structure? The fins, I have no idea about them. Have studies been done, is the community aware, that the view is different?
right. So I just want to show real quickly, in any of these I guess even for this one, in any of these, you can see that the building itself is set back much further from the waterfront, and there is a landscape buffer. For example, you see there's the waterfront is here, Bank Street is the wheel, the building itself is behind the wheel here. So there's a lot of landscaping with additional planting of trees that are being provided in order to kind of provide that cover from the waterfront side. Here. So as you can see, there's a lot of this landscaping that covers the building, which is set back over here. That's on top of the building itself being having these angled fins.
And actually, if you look at this particular on this particular image, this portion of the building was always sort of restaurant, retail, and the terminal, or the wheel itself. This portion, like sort of 2/3 to the west,
Lost it.
was the garage itself. And as you can see on the far left over there, it actually sort of landscape berm, actually sort of like mounted to the top of the garage itself. So you actually couldn't see it, it was mechanically ventilated below the berm. On this one right here, it's actually, there are 2 levels right here, actually show where the wall, and actually it's on the Richmond Terrace side. Right there.
That's a walkway.
Right. That's where the garage is going to be evident, but it's also a landscape buffer that we actually work with the applicant. So at the sidewalk level, there is ample landscape buffers and trees to actually sort of masquerade the fact that you're walking adjacent to a parking structure. And even as you're walking up that path to get to the rooftop, there is a landscape buffer. So you're never actually walking next to a parking structure, but you're actually walking against the landscape buffer, seating, and the fins, the angled fins along the edge of the garage.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin and Ms. Efron.
Well, I appreciate the explanation of how we got from 2013 to today, particularly with the chair's introductory remarks, but I got to say, this is really pretty discouraging because it eliminates so many of the elements that were appealing about the way in which this significant piece of infrastructure was going to be made to relate well to the waterfront. And I'm particularly struck when I read the statement of findings for this special permit that it's all about the parking garage. When what it's supposed to be about is whether this is a superior site plan. And I got so upset about it that I went and looked at a report from 2013 to see how we describe this superior site plan, and it's about, fitting the whole thing together. It's not about fitting 950 cars on this site. Now, I understand that parking is a priority, and we got to figure out how to do this, and I understand that cost is important. But, I think we have to realize that some of the design features that were truly appealing about this in 2013 are now gone. Including in particular the sustainability features, the solar panels and the wind vanes, which were maybe a little bit of greenwash, but at the time seemed like a really important public place to demonstrate that sustainable energy could be used in an important facility like this. Those are gone. So the wheel is still a cool thing. I'm very excited about it, but I'm sad to see that these changes have become necessary.
I think that there's also a cost benefit aspect of actually providing some of those.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Energy efficiency aspect. It's also, if you recall, in the area where the solar panels are being provided in the original was a restricted space. The public could actually use that portion of the area, that portion of the rooftop, and actually the entire rooftop actually sort of was at a sloped perspective. So in this particular site plan, it actually provided more open space, sort of like beer garden type aspect, where it's actually publicly accessible, and the entire rooftop is a level, which actually makes it more opportunity for different types of events to use the rooftop itself. But, and as Farah noted in one of the later plans, all of the pedestrian access across the site, through the site, connecting the ferry terminal, the neighborhoods, the waterfront, they all still remain. Different form, I grant you, but they all still remain there.
And that was a really helpful slide. Yeah, no, I've got every confidence that staff is doing all you can to make the best out of this situation, but I just wanted to express my own thought process, and it will certainly evolve as we go through the public review and come back here.
And you're right, one of the major concerns in the original was there are 820 commuter parking spaces right now for the ferry terminal, and also used by the baseball park next door. It was very important to maintain, the original RFP noted that whatever use was going to be here had to maintain the existing parking in addition to whatever parking was needed.
Ms. Efron.
Thank you. I wasn't here, so I apologize if this question is redundant to previous conversations the Commission had. But in looking at the children's play area, I understand, Farah, that it is better utilization now. But can you explain the planes of where the exposed driveway comes in and where the kids are playing? I understand it's underneath, so it's not a question of safety, but really just one about exhaust.
Right, so as you can see here, originally, there was a berm, the green berm that covered the mechanically vented parking garage, along with the Nicholas Street ramp right here. And this is actually at Richmond Terrace level. You can see right here. It's like, this is Richmond Terrace and the sidewalk, and this goes straight into the park, into the playground. Currently, all that's happened is that the playground has shifted and this decking has been removed. So this was always below grade. It's about, this is, I think, one level down. This is above. There is a planting buffer that's provided here between the edge of this, the decking and the playground itself. And then the playground is provided, again, it's at Richmond Terrace level. This goes below this decking to the second level below.
West right away with the driveway.
Yeah. So this is a better view.
Oh, much better, thank you.
There's, there are landscaping provided with trees along this decking.
And also the
walkway and then the parking.
to the west itself, the garage actually rises right there. It also is another rise in the garage itself. And that actually, as Mr. Cantor was noting, it's at 50% opening the ventilated garage. That area in particular, trying to not have that, obviously, playgrounds in that area.
Great, so someone has looked into the exhaust and how it changes without the berm and with the naturally ventilating walls. Okay, great.
Any other questions for Ms. Deleuze?
Given the importance that the landscaping is playing, I mean, it has always played a very important role, but now especially because of the role that it's playing to kind of screen the garage, I'm just wondering what requirements we're thinking of ensuring that that there's mature plantings at the time that the construction happens versus seedlings that are going to take 15 years to actually screen the area. Is that part of the conversation?
That is part of, obviously, part of the development plan is that they provide a detailed open space and landscaping plan. And part of the landscaping plan that I'm going to try to show, see, right here, part of the open space design plans are these tree plans that they needed to provide to us that highlights exactly what kind of trees will be provided where, as well as, where the planting would take place. So these are integrated into the landscaping plan and, will be required by the applicant to, include.
Including the size of tree.
Yeah. Right, so,
To start, anyway.
I guess it's kind of hard to show the details here,
Okay.
but it would,
We can get back to more detail.
yeah.
Yeah. I imagine it's going to be a common question. Thank you.
Mr. Cantor?
Thank you.
Does a landscaping model exist?
Does a landscaping model exist?
If you recall, we had an actual physical model of
do.
the original.
Yeah.
Right.
We've not seen a physical model of the proposed, but I mean, there's been, and they've got a full landscape team that's working on this to ensure that what you're seeing here, and I think our urban design folks will probably be working with their landscape designer, landscape architect, for quite some time, but on all the details, on this, to make sure that.
But Len, I think in the colloquy that's been going on, particularly the points made by Commissioner Levin as to the overall image, if you have an existing model, I think it would be very helpful to bring that one forth as well as the model that they're making and they're presenting now the second time around. If it is self-explanatory, that takes a lot of aggravation out of it. It's not self-explanatory, it's a different conversation. And it certainly helps them, I think, with the community board, too.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good idea. And let me just say that, obviously from our perspective, this is still a work in progress. The applicant will be here when this returns to the community board. There are a number of questions that the applicant will, that's been raised today, and I'm sure will be raised as this goes through the process, that the applicant's going to have to answer. And I think we all would like to see this project go forward, but at the same time, and recognize the constraints that costs particularly that the applicant faces, but at the same time, this is will be an iconic project for the city and an iconic project for Staten Island, to be sure, and we want it to be excellent. And that's up to the applicant ultimately to assure that it is.
We'll relate the request about the model, but I simply know that based upon our own experience in tracking models, it's a sort of a challenge, so I'm not sure.
I think it's a good, but your point is well taken, and I thank you. So, any other questions to Farah? All right, with that, this is certified, and we will see this back here anon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a number of items which are returning to us, a public hearing on Wednesday. The first of which is the Fire Department Rescue 2 facility. It's a site selection and special permit to facilitate a fire rescue unit in Brooklyn in a residential district. Corin Manning of the Brooklyn office is here to make the presentation and tell us what happened to the community board and borough presidents.
Good afternoon. This is an item that is back for public hearing. This is an application by the New York City Fire Department as well as DCAS for site selection of city-owned property as well as a special permit to facilitate the construction of a 20,000 square foot fire department facility in Ocean Hill, Brooklyn, Community District 16. This is for Rescue 2, one of FDNY's elite rescue operation companies. The special permit would permit a fire station in an R6 zoning district, as this use is not permitted as of right in residential zoning districts. The proposed Rescue 2 facility is part of the Fire Department Special Operations Command. It is one of 5 such rescue companies citywide. One is located in each borough. And these are special companies trained to respond to specialized emergencies. The proposed facility would serve the surrounding area as well as respond to calls throughout Brooklyn and the city as needed. The current Rescue 2 facility is located at 1472 Bergen Street, about a mile west of the proposed project location in Brooklyn Community District 8. This firehouse is just about 4,000 square feet and was built in 1893. It's one of the smallest in FDNY's inventory. Because of this small size, much of their equipment is kept in a side yard and actually even off-site, which hinders their response and operational readiness. Therefore, FDNY is seeking to construct a new 2-story building to accommodate the training, storage, and work areas needed for this type of rescue company. The proposed project area is located on a approximately 45,000 square foot city-owned lot on Sterling Place between Howard and Saratoga Avenues in Ocean Hill. This is a vacant city-owned property, and the project site is about 15,000 square feet of this lot. This lot is currently under jurisdiction of HPD. The proposed facility would be developed with approximately 116 feet of frontage on Sterling Place, leaving the remainder of the site unimproved in HPD's jurisdiction. Land uses in the surrounding area are primarily residential, consisting of 1- and 2-family homes, as well as some multifamily walk-up buildings, including several NYCHA developments. The Prospect Plaza development is located just north of this site here. These buildings have been vacant for many years and have been recently demolished. This site will be redeveloped in the next few years in 3 phases and will include public housing, affordable housing, community facilities, and commercial uses. There is a public school, PS 178 Annex, located on the same block as the project site. The proposed development will consist of a 2-story building with a cellar. The building will include about 19,000 square feet of floor area and is a height of 46 feet. The ground floor will be an open floor to store the rescue company apparatuses, as well as a kitchen, conference room, and storage areas. The second floor will include a dormitory, fitness area, lockers, and offices. The roof of the building will be paved and serve as a training space. The cellar will house the building's mechanical equipment as well as equipment storage. 146-foot curb cut is proposed on Sterling Place to facilitate the movement of firehouse apparatus entering and exiting the building. There's a second 12-foot curb cut on Sterling Place as an entrance to the driveway located in the rear of the building, which will have 7 parking spaces. So this is the curb cut for the fire engine and then the curb cut for parking. Because of these curb cuts, the 5 street trees required as per zoning cannot be accommodated on site. 1 street tree can be planted on site, and the remaining 4 will be planted off-site, or funds will be provided to the Parks Department. 6 firefighters would be on site during 2 daily shifts, one from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and a second from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. To facilitate this project, the applicant has requested 2 actions: site selection to construct this facility on a city-owned property, and secondly, a special permit pursuant to Section 7467 of the zoning resolution to permit a fire station in a residential district. Community Board 16 reviewed this project and voted to approve with 2 conditions. They requested that the street trees being planted off-site be planted in Community District 16. And secondly, they requested that unused development rights be transferred to other city-owned property for future development. Just to note, there's only about 100 remaining square feet of development rights on this property following this proposed development. The Borough President also recommended approval with conditions. He has requested that the Fire Department coordinate with the Parks Department on the tree planting and in concurrence with Community Board 16's recommendation that they be planted in the district. And also that the Fire Department coordinate with DOT to ensure appropriate traffic controls in front of the fire station and at the intersection at each end of the block in order to ensure public safety. To install warning signals for when emergency vehicles are traveling in this area. Also to coordinate with DOT on parking, to replicate street parking around the fire department. And the Borough President also recommended that the city take steps to develop a mixed-use school and affordable housing development on the remaining portion of the HPD lot, as well as the adjacent school.
Questions for Corin? Ms. Levin?
Corin, I have a question about the number of runs that are made from the unit itself. I noticed that, because of the technicalities of the seeker analysis, that analysis has to do with people coming and going to the station for
personnel.
Not the kind of common sense analysis that you'd want to have for a fire station in a residential neighborhood. Do you know anything about how many emergency runs are going to be made from here?
Somewhat. That question was posed at the time of certification, and FDNY did respond. And they will be here on Wednesday to respond in more detail, but their response was that they cannot plan for emergencies, essentially, so it's very difficult for them to make any statement about the number of times per day that they run fire engines. They are ready to respond at all times. So, again, they'll be here on Wednesday, too.
But they do have experience of running this unit out of another location. So, okay, forget this site. How many runs, what's been the history of runs, average daily run, average weekly run, whatever makes sense in the last 3 years?
Okay. I'll let them know.
Then
that will
we
be a question on
we can
Wednesday.
interpret it. Thank you.
Mr. Knuckles?
The adjacent four-story building, it's hard to see. Yeah, is that lined up?
I'm not sure if this is, I'm sorry, across the street on Park Place?
No, I'm looking here at a plan of the, on page 62, and it says a four-story residential building. It looks like it's right up against the,
This building here on
Right.
Sterling Place.
right. Does that,
So row house. So that would be this building.
yeah, does that go directly up against the wall
I'm
of?
not sure if they share a wall. It looks like there is a small,
The darkened object there, the darkened,
exactly,
right. That's a residential building, right?
yes.
Okay. And on the other side of that, is that a hallway? What would that be? Or is that a walkway?
So I actually think this is a small side yard. That's what it looks like.
Oh, it's a side yard.
I will confirm that, but it looks like there's a 11-foot side yard.
Yeah, because it's hard to
Yes.
determine from this.
Yeah, it is, because I think there's a very tall kind of fence there.
Right.
That will separate them, but it looks like a 11-foot side yard.
Thank you. Any other questions, Corin? Ms. Ortiz?
Hi, I recognize this is a question for the hearing, but I wanted to sort of pose it so that, FDNY could be prepared. There were two issues that came up earlier. One, and this is related to how many, emergency calls. So the issue of noise, and I recognize that they do not need to comply with the noise regulations. But that said, you're landing in the middle of a residential building. And the other is the concern raised about the one-way street and the potential need to, respond and go an opposite way quickly on a one-way street. There's a school there, there are apartment buildings there. It would be helpful for them to respond to both of those issues.
Great, I'll pass that along.
Any other questions? Okay, public hearing Wednesday. Thanks, Corin.
Thank you. Also, coming back for public hearing on page 80 of your package is the Fourth Avenue warehouse expansion. This is a application to acquire warehouse space for HRA's use for record storage and shops operations in a M11 district. Richard Jacobs of the Brooklyn office is here to make the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrot, Commissioners. This application, again, is back for pre-hearing. It's an application by the Human Resources Administration together with the Department of Citywide Administrative Services as co-applicants for the acquisition, a lease at 10300 Foster Avenue in the Canarsie Flatlands section of Brooklyn Community District 18. Currently, HRA leases a portion of an existing industrial building for various storage uses, and they seek to expand their current tenancy by an additional approximately 202,000 square feet to include record storage information retrieval services, various trade shops, print shop, and a management information systems warehouse. HRA proposes the current expansion relocation in order to consolidate their warehouse and shop operations for greater economy and efficiency. Existing building is located at 10300 Foster Avenue, generally bounded by Foster Avenue on the north, East 105th Street on the east, the L subway line to the south, the nearest cross street being Farragut Road to the south, and East 101st Street to the west. It's located in the Flatlands Fairfield Industrial Business Zone in an M11 zoning district. The M11 district is generally characterized by 1- and 2-story warehouses and light manufacturing buildings. Land uses generally include storage and distribution facilities and light industrial uses, including a private electrical supply company within the building located here. Directly east is the East 105th Street L subway station, which is the primary transportation point for city employees. The project site is located within an existing 425,000 square foot industrial building with mezzanine on a slightly larger lot, 450,000 square foot lot. It's just at under 1 FAR, 0.94 FAR. Currently, HRA leases just under 90,000 square feet, where it receives, stores, and distributes a wide variety of client-related supplies. Within the same building, ACS currently occupies just under 24,000 square feet, primarily used for citywide case storage and the distribution of program supplies and commodities. Again, the proposed addition would add 202,477 square feet to the existing building. HRA would relocate 136 employees to this building as their primary workplace, though 40 of these 136 are tradespeople who work off-site on a daily basis. The expansion includes 30 parking spaces, an existing parking lot, some 22 of these spaces are for the various divisions. Another 8 of those spaces are for transient vehicles making pickups and deliveries on a daily basis. Community Board 18 held a public hearing and unanimously recommended approval of the application without conditions by a vote of 35-0. The Borough President recommended approval of the application with modifications according to the following condition. And I'm paraphrasing, that the Human Resources Administration and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services incorporate, as part of the lease negotiations, a provision for the landlord to assess the structural adequacy of the roof subframing, to incorporate the added weight associated with solar equipment, blue and or green roof improvements, and at a minimum, paint the roof white. Be it further resolved, 1, that DCAS evaluate its requirements contracts for MWB and LBE compliance in order to retain Brooklyn contractors and subcontractors to meet or exceed the 20% participation rate, as well as to coordinate the monitoring of such participation with an appropriate monitoring agency. And secondly, the city shall assess all HRA space used in downtown Brooklyn that might warrant relocation from downtown Brooklyn to the Broadway Junction, and report its findings to the Borough President and the City Council. And finally, the City Council shall obtain such commitments in writing prior to waiving its right to call up the application or otherwise grant its approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Remarkably, no questions, Richard. That's starting the new fiscal year off very well.
Just add also HRA and DCAS will be here on Wednesday, possibly to answer no questions, but to provide any information that might supplement.
A public hearing on Wednesday. Thank you, Richard.
The next item is on page 110 of your package. This is a commission certification action regarding a plaza bonus in the Sheepshead Bay Special District. The building is located at 1809 Emmons Avenue, and Daphne Lundy of the Brooklyn office will make the presentation.
Oops, sorry.
I saw Emmons Avenue, I said, uh-oh.
Here we go.
It's just kind of shocking that
Yeah,
they'll be
right.
too opposed.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod, Commission. So this is a post-referral follow-up for Commission certification for floor area bonus pursuant to the Special Sheepshead Bay District, Section 9413. By providing a plaza, this would generate a floor area bonus of 31,629 square feet and facilitate a mixed residential and commercial development. The project is Area A of the Special Sheepshead Bay District, shown here, within an R5 C22 zoning district. It is bounded by the Belt Parkway Service Road to the north, East 19th Street, Emmons Avenue to the south, and Sheepshead Bay Road to the west. Area A is one full block and zoning lot. The total lot area is 42,172 square feet. The current basic residential floor area of Area A is 1.25. In Area A, all developments with frontage along Emmons Avenue are required to provide and maintain a plaza for public use that is at least 4,000 square feet. Developments in Area A are also eligible for floor area bonus by providing additional plaza or an arcade not to exceed an FAR of 2. The proposed development will consist of a 7-story mixed-use building with ground floor and first floor commercial uses. The portion of the proposed development with frontages along Emmons Avenue and Sheepshead Bay Road will rise to 2 stories. The remaining portions of the building will be set back. The proposed plaza will create a privately owned public plaza that matches current standards for POPs. The plaza will extend along Sheepshead Bay Road and Emmons Avenue frontages. The plaza will be open and accessible at all times and contain approximately 9,037 square feet. POPs public signage will be displayed at each corner of the plaza on Emmons Avenue, East 19th Street, and Sheepshead Bay Road. The total planting and landscaping of the plaza will be 20%, which is above the Special Sheepshead Bay District minimum of 15%. Because this area is in the flood zone, planting species chosen for the plaza will be salt tolerant to mitigate the loss of trees and shrubs following a flooding event. By providing a plaza as per 9408 special floor area bonus provisions, the plaza will generate a floor area bonus of 0.75 FAR. With the additional bonus, the proposed development will contain 81,226 square feet of residential floor area within 58 dwelling units located on floors 2 to 7, and 3,118 square feet of commercial floor area on the first floor for a total FAR of 2. The area is in the 100-year flood zone. As such, the residential lobby of the building shall be wet flood-proofed, and the non-residential portions of the building will be dry flood-proofed with deployable flood shields that would be installed prior to a storm. At the June 15th review session, the Commission had a question on how the elevators would be flood-proofed. All elevator equipment in the building will be located on the roof and will not be damaged during a flooding event. New York City Building Code requires a sump pump to be located in all new elevated buildings, regardless of whether or not it is in the flood zone. Any water that is left in the elevator shaft following a flooding event would be pumped out. Following a flooding event, the elevator would be inspected to ensure that it's working properly. The application was referred out to the Community Board 15. The board voted to approve the project with no conditions 35-2. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Daphne. Questions? Ms. Efron.
This is outside our jurisdiction, but I'm just curious because the colors look rather fluorescent from where we're standing. What is the material on the exterior of the building?
I'm not actually sure, but I could ask the applicant about that. We've gone through, since the focus has been the plaza, the design has changed a little through the process, but, oh, yes.
I think some of us have become quite affectionate about the neighborhood and are just curious about it.
You'll be able to walk by it all the time. Ms. Levin.
Well, back again, but if the community board, whatever I might say about it is sort of undercut by the fact that this particular community board went for this 35-2. So, but, it's just the oddity of our regulations that the floor area that doesn't count is exactly equal to the allowed floor area. The bonus plus the cellar is the same amount as the as-of-right floor area. So how weird is that? But so since the first floor is the cellar, which doesn't count for floor area, that's all the commercial space. Are there any, well, that's the bulk of the commercial space.
Correct.
So how do the special Sheepshead Bay regulations about ground floor retail use apply to the cellar that isn't floor area that's actually at the first floor?
So,
can we have a supermarket here?
No. So any potential uses on the ground floor would be part of the special district regulation, so use group SB. And something that they're trying to propose in this project is open air cafe seating, so they're trying to attract a restaurant, and that's on the side.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking back to previous attractions.
Correct.
Anyway, thank you.
Ms. Deluz.
So this came up during certification, and I seem to be focused on headlights shining into residential spaces today for whatever reason. So this drawing doesn't really help talk or show what kind of shielding might be provided from the parking that's going to happen on the roof from the residential uses that are adjacent to it. Did that come up at all during the conversation, either at the community board or the borough president? And will somebody be here on Wednesday who can talk about that?
It's not going
I'm sorry.
So we discussed this with the applicant. I actually think it also came up during review session.
Yeah.
As per the special district, all exposed parking is supposed to be shielded or screened. So on the side that's along Evans Avenue, there'll be about 5 feet of shrubbery that would kind of block you from the street view. And then along the side, on the second floor, there'll actually be an entrance from the parking onto that level, but there'll also be screening on that side as well to help with the light and the reflections.
Mr. Cantor?
I'm sorry?
Where is the ramp?
Oh, the ramp is along this end. And if you enter the ramp onto the East 19th Street, and that's also where the residential entrance is.
Will that ramp flow light into those apartments on the end?
I can certainly ask the applicant that. Just judging by the location, it's a little hard to tell, but I can look into that. Yeah.
Well, any other questions? So this is ready, given the community board's overwhelming support, to be sent to the buildings department, unless any of you feel that questions that you raised have to be answered before we do so. If not, we will send it to the buildings department with your consent. And nevertheless, ask Daphne to come back with, if we can, with the answers to your questions.
Okay.
Are we going to vote on that?
Yeah, we are, if, unless people would like to hold it for 2 weeks, and then we can, I can see Ms.
I guess it just doesn't, there's nothing that we have currently that shows that people are going to be shielded from lights. We don't get too many applications that have parking adjacent to residential uses quite in this way, and then the drawing just doesn't at all show how that's being mitigated. I believe you that it's happening. I just would.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we see if we can get an answer to these questions by Wednesday, if possible, and try. And then we can, if the answers are satisfactory, we can approve on Wednesday, and if not, we can hold it. I do note, and I'm sort of sad to see it not being voted on today for the sole reason that this has gone through with an unbelievably lightning speed since we had our review on June 15th, and it is less than 1 month later now. So Daphne, if you could find out between now and Wednesday the answer to the questions about where the ramps are, how they affect people's
And the building
sleeping,
materials.
and what?
The building materials.
And the building materials.
Their susceptibility to salt might actually be an
We
issue.
we will try to have the answers to you by Wednesday if possible. I'm sorry?
The roof elevation, that is, they have that, the architect would have that as part of his normal routine.
The roof elevation?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, what's on the roof? I don't mean the elevation. Rendering elevation. That's what they plan to do on that.
Pool and something else.
The pool and the HVAC system, as well as the elevator mechanical equipment.
Okay.
Oh, the parking roof.
We will try to have answers to
Parking
these
roof.
questions by Wednesday.
Okay.
These are very factual questions, and we should be able to get answers.
Yes.
At least we'll try. Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll try to bring this back. The next item, item number 5, is on page 132 of your package. This is to reconstruct an interior public plaza at 180 Maiden Lane. And Richard Suarez, the Manhattan office, is here to make the presentation.
AIG.
No. used to be Continental Can originally.
All right.
Richard.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a private application for a modification of a previous City Planning Commission certification to allow design changes to the existing enclosed public space at 180 Main Lane in Lower Manhattan. 180 Main Lane is located on a full block here, bounded by Main Lane to the north, Front Street to the west, South Street and the FDR Drive to the east, and Pine Street to the south. It is located just south of the historic South Street Seaport, just west of Water Street in the financial core, and just east of the FDR Drive and the East River Waterfront Esplanade. The existing building was completed in 1982, rises to 38 stories, contains approximately 932,000 square feet of zoning floor area for an FAR of approximately 20. While the base of the building is generally aligned with the streets, the upper floors have been rotated to align with the cardinal directions. Some defining features of the building include the octagonal floor plates of the upper floors. This is a view of the building from Maiden and Front Street, so you have the octagonal upper floors, the aquarium-like tinted glass. There's a space frame on the ground floor, which you might be able to see here, and you'll see in some other photos. That's also encased in brass, and then these kind of Hoover-like vacuum entrances at each of the entrances. So this is the...
You win. Best comment of the day.
This is the main entrance at Maiden and Front Street. This is a look at this is Pine Street here, which is a pedestrian street. This is the Pine and Front Street entrance, and then this is a look at the Pine and Front Street entrance again, looking down Front Street. The building is located in a C53 zoning district within the South Street Seaport sub-district of the Special Lower Manhattan District. It is also located within the boundaries of the Brooklyn Bridge Southeast Urban Renewal Area, but is an exempt parcel and is therefore not subject to the provisions of that plan, which is effective until 2068. The base of the building contains an expansive enclosed public space measuring approximately 25,000 square feet in area. The public space has entrances at the corners of Maiden and Front Streets, Front and Pine Streets, and Maiden and South Streets. During Hurricane Sandy, I should note, the ground floor of the building was inundated with about 6 feet of water, causing significant damage to the building and the enclosed public space. And since the storm, the features of the public space have been completely stripped away, and the space has been largely inaccessible with the exception of the main entrances, and then small areas to then access the escalators taking you up to the office portion of the building. The enclosed public space was provided as a mandatory lot improvement required by the former Special Manhattan Landing Development District. Identified as Parcel 20Q within the Special District, the development was required to provide an enclosed public space subject to the size, dimensional, design, and operational requirements described in Appendix B of this former Special District text. In return, the development received an as-of-right 3 FAR bonus. The Commission in 1979 certified that the original design of the enclosed public space conformed to the mandatory lot improvement requirements of Appendix B of the Special District pursuant to then Section 9871. It also, at the same time, certified a transfer of approximately 304,000 square feet of development rights from the Seaport Bank. Subsequent certifications were made by the Commission in 1989 and 1992 that those design changes continue to conform to the mandatory lot improvement requirements of Appendix B, also pursuant to then Section 9871. So, as I described, this entire space is inaccessible. Everything's been stripped away, but this is what the 1992, the last approval, looked like. So this is Front Street, Maiden Lane, South Street, Pine Street. The main entrance is here at Maiden and Front Street. When you do enter, there are 2 escalators that take you up to the lobby of the commercial office building portion. Flanking those are these 2 monumental stairs, at the base of which are planters. So that's what you see here. Here's the escalator going up, and then here's the stair coming up. Moving over to the Front Street side, throughout the space there are 16 trees. On the Front Street side, again, there are trees. There are these seating pods around some of the trees. There's a stage, a performance stage with a large LCD screen. So this is what you see here. And then arranged around it are amphitheater-style seating, or just movable tables, movable chairs. Moving through this hallway here, coming to the South Street side, there's a retail kiosk here, movable tables and chairs floating around, and then a larger kind of seating pod here, also among trees. and then more tables and chairs in the back. In the back here, there are, what is this escaping me? Payphones.
You remember those, right?
And then there are public restrooms here in the back. There is, so at the main entrance, there is a art exhibit both here and then against this wall. In the center area here, there's a retail area, so it's a newsstand or a kiosk, and then the other side is an exhibition space. I should note that the whole ground floor, again, is encased in this kind of space frame structure. So this is the South Street side here. You'll see this brass space frame structure and that brass opening. And then this here is a look at the Front Street side, looking towards the main entrance, so looking that way. I should note that there is an outdoor space here, which was not part of the bonus, but it is sort of an alley of trees going between Pine and Maiden Lane with fixed seating along the edges. The public space does have the approved hours of, currently operates or was approved to operate from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, was closed on the weekends. So I should note, so in 1998, the Special Lower Manhattan District was created to simplify and consolidate the myriad of regulations down here in Lower Manhattan, which involved the elimination of the Special Greenwich Street Development District, the Special South Street Seaport District, and the Special Manhattan Landing Development District. Whereas the now expired Manhattan Landing Development text had a mechanism to allow design changes to the enclosed public space, which was a CPC certification, the existing special district text did not establish a mechanism to allow changes, even though the public space continues to be governed by the Manhattan Landing Development District text and the features identified in the 1992 CPC certification. The only other building in the Manhattan Landing Development District that provided mandatory lot improvement was 175 Water Street, which is about a block away, but that had a special permit attached to it, so any modifications to that lot improvement could be made through a modification of the special permit.
Okay.
In order to restore and modernize the public space, as well as to facilitate hardening of the building from future storms, the applicant is proposing to make significant upgrades to the public space. So this is the 1992 approval, and this is what is proposed. We have Front, Maiden, South, and Pine Street. So at the main entrance here, which would actually be widened and made a little taller and clad in black, no more brass, you would then enter, and then the monumental stairs that were flanking the escalators will now be placed in the center, then freeing up sight lines into the rest of the space here. The number of trees will generally remain the same. There'll be 15 trees in the same locations throughout the space. A lot of seating will be located at the main entrance, both fixed and movable, with planters attached to those fixed seats. Moving over to the South Street side, there'll be a large performance lawn or recreational lawn where there will be bistro tables and chairs, as well as picnic tables and chairs. And then there will be bleacher seating and a small performance stage here. And then a wooden riser would rise from the floor to the ceiling, from which a projection screen would come down. And the applicant at any time would have public movie nights and viewings and other events that would take place on this little lawn. The riser is required to also part of the hardening of the building. So after the storm, all of the mechanical equipment were moved from the basement up to the third floor. They've also located a switch room up there, but here are the connet vaults. So the applicant's proposing to have all the connections come in, go up the riser, and then to the new switchgear up on the third floor, which would then leave any vulnerable equipment way out of the flood zone. Back here on the Front Street side, there would also be more seating located at the main entrance, both again fixed here, those little fixed seats with the planters, and movable, which are in black. Back here would be charging stations, modern upgrade to the public payphones. Moving over through the hallway here, you then come to the South Street side. Here there'd be more fixed seating and more planting, and then and a variety of different types of seating. And there would also be the gallery that was once located here would be located along the hallway and then here on this back area. And then the central area would be replaced with one larger retail space, which would also be a coffee stand or a coffee shop or a newsstand. I should note, and I didn't forget to mention this, that there is a mezzanine here, outlined here, which is about 15 to 20 feet tall. But all of this, and that would of course remain, all of this does read as one large open space. The public space will provide public Wi-Fi, which is going to be a great addition to this area. And the applicant did their best to follow the public plaza rules as closely as possible, and as best as they could apply it to an indoor space, so that meeting requirements for planting, seating, and other amenities. I will note that the applicant was able to lengthen the hours of operation from 8:30 a.m. to 10 p.m., but still Monday through Friday, and the space would continue to be closed on the weekends. I can just go through some renderings. Big, I'll show you the PowerPoint. So this is a look at the main entrance here. So before it was a brass encased entrance, so it's been widened and made taller. And then clad in black. There would be public space signs at all entrances. So on the windows, before they were stickers that you really couldn't see the logo and you couldn't see the signs. Now there'll be a highly contrasting silver background with green or black painting. And those will be at each of the entrances on both ends of the doors. And then also within the space, there would be informational signs following the POPs rules, detailing all the amenities within the space. The space frame will be clad in, will now be stripped down to a silver to lighten up the space. Previously it was all bronze, now it's going to be all chrome. We can go through some of those images. This is a look at the entrance. So that's center stair. So now you can see into both sides. So this is the Front Street side, the South Street side, and then you have a center stair coming up for tenants to go straight up. And then seating and planting would be located flanking pretty close to that main entrance. Just right here, this is the South Street side. So here's the seating kind of arranged at certain angles, but allowing interaction and social interaction with folks. Here's the retail space, and then further back, so further back here, would be where the art would be located, both on the wall and there'd be sculptures within the space. The last one more.
No more grand piano.
And this is the recreational lawn. So we're right here. So here's the lawn. Again, the retail space is back here. And this here is that wooden riser I was talking about, the screen that would only come down during events or during movies. Again, here's the silver space frame. And then more seating again at the main entrances. In order to facilitate the proposed design changes, the applicant is requesting a modification of the previous 1992 certification. As part of the action, the Commission is being asked to certify that the proposed design changes continue to comply with the requirements for the enclosed public space outlined for District Parcel 20Q in Appendix B of the former Special Manhattan Landing Development District. Attached to your packages is the applicant's statement of findings, which goes through each requirement A through G and describes how that provision is proposed to have been met. As part of the action, a restrictive declaration will be established that would allow future changes to the enclosed public space to take place by chairperson certification. This application was referred by staff to Manhattan Community Board 1 for 30 days on June 12th, and on July 1st, the Financial District Committee of CB1, by a vote of 8-0 with 0 abstentions, recommended to the full board that a resolution be adopted recommending approval of the application. No comments. Happy to take questions.
Well, let me just say, I mean, this is a building I know very, very well, and now it is right, but quite proximate to South Street Seaport, and as you know, this neighborhood is changing and has become really a 24/7 community, so I'm a little distressed that this, what looks like a good upgrade to the public space in this building, which has been offline now for a couple of years because of Sandy, is not proposed to be open on weekends, as both the community board and I know the Downtown Alliance has been actively promoting Lower Manhattan as a weekend destination, and I would urge you, Richard, to go back to the applicant, at least from me, and suggest that they consider seriously opening this on weekends. It's a full-service building. There's going to be, there are full 24/7 operations in this building, from law firms to investment banks to other 24/7 uses. So it's not like the building itself is literally going to be closed on the weekends. And they could accommodate, at least during daylight hours, keeping this space open. So that's
Not just Carl.
other,
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It's not just your comment.
Others who agree with you.
Okay.
He doesn't have to go back on your behalf alone.
You can say
Yeah.
They have weekend
many
people in the
members of
picture.
this commission, if not unanimously, would urge that. Mr. Marin?
Richard, thank you for the presentation. I just have one simple question, because, this building is a prominent building and sort of an entrance into the South Street Seaport area. And understanding that the public plaza is being, redeveloped and opened up, the glass treatment will not change, is that correct?
That's right.
But the space frame will change in terms of color, you're saying?
Yeah, so the space frame was always chrome, and then there was a kind of brass color that was added to it, so it's just being stripped down.
Okay.
In addition, the wood that is cladding all the columns and the walls will then be changed to more chrome silver to lighten up the space.
Suggestion, as you drive by on the FDR, this building, while a prominent building, from the FDR looks like it's abandoned. The windows look like they haven't been washed in years, and I think that if you're going to lighten up the space, it would behoove them to kind of clean that up so that more light can come in. There's hardly any light coming in there. There's a cake of dirt that's about, a quarter of an inch thick on the windows. It's just so unattractive, and it's unwelcoming. It doesn't show that the building is being utilized right now.
I mean, it has been, a good chunk of the building has not been occupied since the storm. The building is running on generators right now, so with this,
Oh, wow.
so when the public space design is approved, then they can actually put the riser in and get the equipment up. There is a new ownership. In the end of last year, SL Green sold the building to Murray Hill Properties, so new owner, I'm sure. With this upgrade to the public space, they're cleaning the windows.
Thank you, Richard.
And Ms. Levin?
Just a question about the procedural situation here. It's come back from the community board, but I see that their resolution is dated July 28th. So are we going to hang out until the full board approves it?
If we were to come back at the next review session, what's the date of that?
August, yeah.
Yeah, by that time, the full board would have met and issued a full resolution.
Okay, good. One more reason why opening the public space on the weekends is a good idea is those restrooms are increasingly valuable to the public with more tourists and.
Sure. And ferry service.
Yeah. Yeah, and the ferry terminal nearby, so.
So we'll work with the applicant to work out
That would be-
a set of hours for the weekend.
That would be a great thing.
That would be great. Any other questions for Richard? Okay, we'll see this after the full community board has an opportunity.
We
to
will relay
weigh
the
in.
commission's concern to the applicant and bring this back on August 3rd.
Okay, and this also will go to the full board?
Yes.
Full community board?
Yes.
There's only the land use committee to vote on? Not, I don't think technically it goes to the borough.
This will go to the full board.
It will go to the full board. And I expressed to the full board as well our sentiments about this.
Sure.
See if they weigh in on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, our next order of business is our future vote calendar. Coming up on July 15th, we prepared favorable reports for Metro Tech Area Business Improvement District, which is an enlargement of the bid to provide services to the 10 blocks which encompass the downtown Brooklyn Cultural District. To 269 Henry Street, which is a UDAP to facilitate the rehabilitation of a former firehouse to community facility use for the Henry Street Settlement Services. Bright Horizons Children's Center is an amendment to Special Long Island City Mixed Use District to allow community facility use on the ground floor buildings fronting on Queens Plaza. 3939 Richmond Avenue YMCA, which is an authorization for modifications to topography and group parking requirements in the Special South Richmond District to facilitate an open parking lot of more than 30 spaces.
Could I just ask?
Yes.
ask a question about that one? Just to get confirmation that the additional parking area complies with all of the parking lot landscaping requirements?
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's getting all the screening, and it's getting the trees in the middle and bioswales and...
That's correct. It's
Okay.
being treated as a new parking facility.
Good. And how about bicycle parking? Are there racks at the Y? I couldn't see it on Street
I
View.
don't know.
Might be nice if they added that, because it is the Y after all.
By the way, it was referred to the community
I
board and
saw that, yeah.
voted in favor 39 to nothing with one abstention.
Yeah, no, I realize my comment is sort of apropos of nothing at all, but...
It's never apropos, nothing at all.
Okay, on August 5th, we are proposing to prepare favorable reports for the City Island water supply and drainage easement, which, as you may recall, is the acquisition of 2 easements in City Island to facilitate improvements to the water supply as well as stormwater outfalls. We have the acquisition of evidence storage and central record space for the New York Police Department and for the New York County District Attorney, which is a site selection on the 5th and 6th floors of 4312 2nd Avenue in Brooklyn. We received late on Friday a letter from DCAS to address some of the questions raised by the commission at the public hearing, which you had on your dais this morning. And we have 2 landmarks. One,
I think so.
Very short.
oh, maybe it was in your office, I'm sorry.
I don't think I saw it there either.
We got a sleeping letter for Bright Horizons.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, but not a DCAS letter.
Not DCAS.
Site selection.
Oh, is it here? Oh.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, sorry. Here it is, great.
CPC involvement
Thank you.
Thank you, I would have been embarrassed if it wasn't there.
Sorry.
We would have brought back Jackie.
And we have 2 landmarks. One is for a single-family house that was built in 1854 at 128 Clinton Avenue, known as the Henry and Susan McDonald House. And the other is a former dairy company building, an engine room built in 1932 at 582 Myrtle Avenue, which is known as the M.H. Rankin Dairy Office Building and Engine Room.
Okay,
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
thank you all. See you on Wednesday.
This is different.
I didn't even get it. I didn't get the day.
No, it's here. All right.